Okay, my friends, I've got my good friend and colleague, Carmen Tuleta, back on the podcast. So thanks, Carmen, for being here.
Oh gosh, I love doing this with you. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. So we were talking before, and I was just like, fuck it. Let's just hit record because we're literally talking about the podcast while we're not recording. So, okay. So on today's podcast, we're going to talk about what I call iterating in our head and what I noticed with myself, with other colleagues of mine, with clients. Like, this is what we do. And to me, iterating in our head, iterating with thought versus action is we think about something, we almost like gameplay it out in our head before we take action versus just taking the action, getting the data, getting feeling the feelings, and then taking another step. How has this, if you're open to it, how has this shown up for you? I'll also talk about how it shows up for me.
Oh, it shows up in all the places for me. I am a chronic overthinker,
Mhm.
but something that has helped me with that is definitely learning my human design and
Mm,
how that impacts me. But it definitely shows up, like you said, I plan out exactly how things are going to go
yeah.
in my head and all of the steps that I have to take, or all of the what ifs, right?
Mhm.
That come up. And like you said, it's a form of procrastination. It's a way of, and I think it's a way of keeping ourselves safe because our minds want to keep ourselves safe, um, because they're brilliant, right? Our
Yeah.
minds are brilliant things.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, it is definitely keeps me safe
Yeah.
from that unknown thing. And I think in this world that we live in, we haven't been taught how to sit in that unknown.
Yeah. For sure. We were talking about that earlier today. And I think that, well, first of all, I think that all of us, if we go to school in the traditional way, it rewards you for thinking, for planning out, for, you get good grades because you like had this long thought process and you have this written out. Like the teacher's not like, go do some shit and come back and like tell me how it went, right? It's very much so like a thought out cerebral process, which is very conducive to following the leader, 9 to 5 thinking, which I mean, I've done 9 to 5. So, hey, I'm not bashing on that. And also, like, 9 to 5 does not prep you for entrepreneurship at all, right? It keeps you
Absolutely
in
not.
that, like, hey, am I doing it right? Did I, what do you think about this? It keeps us, I think, from an outsourcing our power and like someone else knows the answer versus, no, we just got to do the thing. And then what do we, you know, think and feel about this?
Right. And even when we're kids, I don't know how many times, even to my children, I've said this: use your head.
Mm, yeah.
What were you thinking? Use
Yep.
your head. And a lot of times they're just using their bodies because they haven't had the conditioning to um not use their bodies. Not
Yeah.
like they haven't been told enough already that life doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when we are in our heads, and you have an undefined head in Ajna?
I have an undefined head in Ajna.
Okay. Well, I have a
I only
defined
have
head
3
in Ajna.
centers defined.
Yes, that's true. Okay. I have a defined head in Ajna. And here's where I'm like, I totally dig human design. And also, like, it's, just something to play with and use.
Yep.
Because here we go. You have two people who have opposite and we're still experiencing the same thing, right? So I think sometimes with human design we can get attached to like, oh, well, I have this center defined so I can't like and you've heard me on previous podcasts, right? Like never use human design to disempower yourself, but just recognize Carmen has no head and ajna defined. I do have a head and ajna defined and we're still doing this because I agree with you. I think it comes back to safety. I think it comes
Absolutely.
back to getting outside our comfort zones. It feels really uncomfortable to do things, one, that we haven't done yet. And we're not that practiced and our skill set isn't built up quite yet. I mean, I think all of us are at a different place, right? Where we get to feel, because you have to ask yourself, what am I unwilling to feel right now if I were just good to go take that action?
Right. It's that uncomfortableness, right?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna backtrack for a second. When you were talking about human design and that using it as a tool versus an end all be all.
Yeah.
I love to look at our human design, body graph, whatever you want to call it. We all have the same parts,
Yes.
whether they're defined or not, right? So we're all people, we're all going to have these thoughts, feelings, emotions, whatever, regardless of what definition is in our chart. So making it significant really doesn't do anyone justice, right?
Yeah. So I want to clarify. So what you're saying is we're all human. We all have emotions. We all have thoughts. Like take away the
Right.
human design. Like we're all created equal in the sense of like we have those feelings and sensations and thoughts that are coming
Right.
up. And at the basis, like biologically, we want to stay safe, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. In a more
Yeah.
simplistic way. Thank you.
Yeah. In a very simplistic way. So for people that are listening and they're like, okay, that's great, but how do I actually do this? How do I? And here's, okay, let me back up. Here's the other thing. I'm not saying just take action. I remember my uncle used to be like, we're just going to take action, even if it's the wrong way. And then, but at least we're taking action. I agree somewhat. And then I also think that some can be a little bit crazy, right? Like if you're just making, like if you're taking very chaotic action, I don't want you to be taking chaotic action. Like,
There has to be direction.
yeah, he was just definitely like, I'm sure he's probably a manager. And he just like was very much of like, we're just gonna go do the thing, and it doesn't even matter if it's the wrong way. We'll figure, and there is actually, there is truth. There is some truth in
Absolutely.
that, right? Like, because if it is the wrong way, you will know because you will have data. You will have some experiences that you can be like,
Mhm,
time out. Okay, we
mhm.
are in the wrong direction. So I'm not advocating to just go take action and hustle and just go do the thing. But what I am suggesting is that you do get faster at taking action when you are moving in alignment with your decision making um
Process.
what skills or your type or whatever, like
Mhm.
once I have ridden my wave and I do feel that, okay, I need to, like, we were just the other day, we're moving some of our IRA to purchase some silver, and totally like had the conversation, ridden my wave, know what's happening in the market, like know all the things, right? And so it's Jason's account, his IRA. And so as we're doing that, he's like, good, done, and I'm like, and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. I just feel a little bit. He's like, Aaron, it's literally silver. And I'm like, I know, but just that like what you were saying, that uncomfortableness of it's a little bit different than what we've done before. This is new, right? Like, and so recognizing, I was seeing myself being like, okay, I could procrastinate, right? Like I could take longer to fill out the form and to like get back to her. Like, no, Aaron, you felt good. You already made the decision, move. So
So even as evolved as I think I sometimes can be when I think about where I am with my human design or where I am in life, I can still ride my wave like you, be in a place of, okay, we're doing this thing and not do it,
yep.
not take the action because it feels scary.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about riding or widening that window of tolerance,
Yeah.
it becomes a practice. It becomes a thing that little things you do to make that comfortable feeling a little bit lessened each time you do it, right?
Yes.
So
Yep.
starting small is a
Yeah.
big way to widen that window, to be able to sit in that uncomfort. I mean, my window of tolerance has like exponentially gotten bigger, but I
Yeah.
still get stuck. I mean,
Yeah.
we're human, right?
Yep. Yeah. And I think awareness is everything. And like you say, starting small, it's not something that, the self development world or just in general, right? Like I think we like love the big gains, but it's like you like consistency is, as much as I don't like that word because I rebel against consistency, there I do live my life with consistency.
You're
I
also
do.
a generator.
So, being consistent of like, okay, taking a little bit of action every day of something, right, is so much more because you're just building up, number one, neural pathways, you're building up, window of tolerance, you're building up the proudness, the satisfaction within yourself of like, look at what I did, so you're getting this like feedback versus wait, 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 wait. And then it's so big and then you don't have the skill set, right? And so, like you say, so starting small, what else would you suggest for people to
Finding tools to be able to sit with it.
mm,
Um, when we talked about some of this morning, you had given a really good tool about the the 5. I can't remember
oh,
exactly what you said, and I think that that is a really good tool to bring us back into our body and, be able to sit in that uncomfort a little bit longer than we did the previous time.
yeah. What Carmen's referring to is like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, almost just like a getting present. So, like choosing 5 things in your current environment, seeing like, so using your 5 senses, but the number 5 is what 5 things can I see? So, like, that would be like, I see my ring light, and then I see my Pellegrino, and I see the clock, and I see Carmen, and I see the world, and my little world 3D thing, and I see my candle. I think that's 5, right? Okay, so that's 5, right? So you're like bringing your nervous system back to the parasympathetic state, which is the rest and digest, and you're not in that stress state. And then 4 would be like feel, right? So like you could start with your fingers, or like, what does my vest feel like? So go through that. And then 3 would be hear. So what do I hear? I hear my little heater, and heard someone knocking on the door, and I heard, like, so you hear these things, and it's able to bring you back to the present. And then smelling is 2, and then tasting is 1, and I'll just put that in the show notes. But that's
For
been
sure.
really helpful for me because sometimes when you're about to do something really scary, it doesn't freaking feel, oh, just go do the thing, right? It's like
Right.
we need to calm our nervous system in the process.
One of the other tools that I like to use for myself, and I've used it with my kids ever since they were little, is I used a different version with my kids, but box breathing.
Yes.
And it's just so many counts in, hold for so many counts out, and then you do like so many repetitions of it. Um, with my kids when they were little, I would always say, okay, just breathe. And we would do just a little bit of breathing. And that was really good at bringing them present.
Yeah. I think a lot of us have been told, calm down, right?
Hmm.
Versus, why don't we take a breath, or why don't we breathe right now, right? Calm down to me feels like the energy of like, this is an issue, stop it right now,
Hmm.
versus breathe. And what Carmen, is like box breathing, if you're unfamiliar, like you're saying, is like taking in a breath for 4 seconds and holding it for 4 seconds and releasing it for 4 seconds and waiting 4 seconds until you take another breath. And I mean, it can be, whatever the seconds feel good for you. But I think, yeah, I mean, we always have a breath. We forget about our breath. And a lot of us are breathing from our higher up part of our chest. I don't know where I read this. If I can find it, I'll put it in the show notes. But they talk about the higher up is with your sympathetic, and then the lower part, the reason why they want you to do diaphragm, I'm not going to say this incorrectly, diaphragmatic, is that how you pronounce it?
Diaphragmic.
Yeah, something. Oh, you know what I mean? From your diaphragm, right? You're pushing your diaphragm down,
Yep.
is from the parasympathetic, right?
Oh,
Because it reaches the vagus nerve. And so when you inhale all the way and expand your lungs out, it pushes that diaphragm down and somehow connects to, I'm not the physiology person, but it connects to the vagus nerve and it calms you, right? And
right.
so when we're in that heightened state of just breathing from our upper chest, we're constantly signaling the sympathetic, the stress state that we're in. So really starting to breathe deeply so that we
Right.
can
One of
cool
the
the
other
nervous system.
tools that I haven't used a lot, but it's something that I actually started to dive more deeply into because I learned about it being in the grow the CEO
Mhm.
cohort. Sorry, was tapping,
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
and it is a good one. I haven't done a lot of it, but it is definitely something that I will be implementing in the future. And I think
Yeah.
it is going to be beneficial to so many people,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to thought versus action
Yeah.
in business, in life, anywhere.
Yeah. And I think what Carmen's saying is the tapping, and we've had, I'll put, Noelle came on, and she actually showed us like what tapping, it's emotion freedom technique. And I think sometimes people can get caught up if you're new to tapping. I always suggest, okay, go work with someone. And also, like, you're literally just put tapping on different points and meridians in your body. And I used to get really hung up because I wouldn't do it. Like, here we go back to perfection, right? I didn't
Right.
know the words to say, so I wouldn't do it. And it wasn't till I started going to an energy person, and she was like, it doesn't even matter the words, just tap on it because it's going to hit, obviously, those parts in your body, right?
Right.
And so we're just trying to move energy and release some of this stuff. And I think so many of us, it's just natural, right? It's like something happens, like whether you get hit by a car or you're going to go do something new, the stress feels the same in the body, right? And so we tense up and we're like, versus allowing ourselves, giving ourselves the tools to use so that we can um, relax and then take action from that place.
And how does having these tools change things when we're looking at the spectrum of our business and our life? Like being able to move forward
Oh my
more
gosh.
so in your business or in life, that's like so huge. I think about the impact that these tools have on later generations
I just wrote that
and
down.
how how people are going to shift how they do things because of it.
Yeah.
And how parents are going to parent differently and how business is going to be done differently. And I think it's an amazing thing. Um, that's yeah, it's just so great.
Yeah. I was going to say, I can't imagine not having these tools in business. And I'm like, oh, I actually did. I was a fucking
Right.
basket case when I was with my dad.
Well, and I look
It's
I
so
look
stressful.
back at my life too. Like if I would have had the tools that I have now,
Yeah.
how things could have been different. But
Yeah.
here's the thing. We had the tools we had at the time.
Yeah.
We
For
did
sure.
what we could at the time. So leaving that in the past and just moving
Yeah.
forward is
Yeah.
the beauty, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and and sitting with the realization that life can be pretty sweet when we have these tools.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the cliff notes, or it's like someone, like cheating on a test or something. You're just like, you've got some stuff that
Mhm.
you it's available to everyone. The question becomes, are you willing to start implementing these tools, right? So,
Right.
but having that, like, I can't, so many people I think are so quick to be like, what is the strategy? What is the this, the that? Like we want to know the 3D part of like, oh, well, what's it going to do? Yeah, like with the head, right?
Mhm.
Versus everything truly is like we can figure it out when we are at a calmer place.
Right. Having the tools doesn't mean that things aren't still going to come up in life.
100%.
It's just having the ability to move through it with a little bit more ease.
Yeah. And I think your is it refractory period is shorter. I think that's what,
Mhm.
like, I
Mhm.
remember asking my
How
business.
fast you bounce back, right?
Yeah. I remember asking my business coach cuz she was like, this was like what, 6 years ago, 4 years, 5, I don't know. And we were just like dumbfounded cuz we were like, well, then what fucking changes if you're making all this money and you still, because she was saying she still feels this way. And we were all just like, well, we've been sold a bill of goods. Like, and we don't want to sign up for this. Like, what's the point? And at the time, she was like, you're just faster at recovering. It just isn't as intense. She didn't use these exact words, right? But it's just not as intense in the body. And that is everything, like
Right.
to not get upset over things you used to get upset because either you have the tools or it's just not a trigger for you anymore because you worked through that. Like that's
Mhm.
huge. I mean, so yeah, I think having the tools, not just having the tools.
Using the
Using
tools.
using the tools, right? And sometimes, I mean, another tip that I would give is like get a buddy. Carmen and
Mhm.
I are Marco Polo and boxer buddies. I mean, but seriously, how often do we, just that little couple of text messages or a Marco
Mhm.
Polo, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, easy to just get
Some
back on track.
and sometimes we don't even need the other to chime in. It's
Nope.
just putting it out there, right? It's like, "Oh, I'm just processing out loud," and because we all do it,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Anything else that you want to add that maybe we've forgotten?
Um, I was going to say something about I've I've always heard about anxiety and the biggest cure to which is that uncomfortable feeling. The biggest cure to anxiety is taking action.
Yeah, because anxiety is the way it felt for me, it was like fear of the future, and they say depression
Mhm.
is, reminiscing over the past, and for me, for sure of the future, right? And
Right.
not really feeling. I mean, anxiety, I don't think is an actual emotion. It is a
No.
resistance to
Yes.
an emotion, right? So for me, tell me if this is true for you. It's resistance of fear. That's what it is for me.
Mhm.
Anxiety
For
is.
me too. Yep.
Right? So we're not actually feeling fear. And there's this great, I'll put it in the show notes. There's this great Sarah Blondin. It's like a 10-minute meditation on Insight Timer. But number one, she has just this best soft voice, like you just, when you listen to some meditation teachers and you're just like, oh, this feels amazing. But she has a fear one and she basically talks you through it for a little bit. And then she actually does a meditation. And she's like, what is your fear trying to tell you? Like, if you
Mhm.
were to imagine it to be a friend, what is it? And are you listening? And when we can look at fear in that way versus it's trying to act against us or it's this big scary monster or, whatever it is, versus, oh, the little like the 5 or the 10-year-old in us, like, "Oh, honey, what's going on right now? What do you need?" That has helped me of like welcome it more. Like, I'm not over here like, "Hey, come on, fear, I love you," but like
Nor am I.
but like it does make it easier. It does make it a little bit more palatable when the fear comes up.
A huge book that actually helped me with my fear because it's a constant thing for me. It's a theme in my life, I think, is Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways.
Yeah.
I think it's by Susan Jeffers. And that was a huge and it talks about how we talk to ourselves, right? The stories
Yep.
that we tell ourselves. So that was another huge one. And yeah, again, taking action.
That is the only way. I mean, unless it's gonna
Mhm.
kill you, literally kill you,
Mhm.
that is the only way that I have found to move through the fear.
Yep. Even if it's a baby step.
Yeah, and that's where we gotta start, right? Like,
Yep.
I mean, you do have to start with the baby step, but I know a lot of things feel like they're gonna kill us, but, like, very, very small amount actually, really does.
And
Like, yeah,
again,
fear is healthy. Like, having healthy fear, you know, the kid not paying attention and texting and driving, I'm a little scared of him and I get in a different lane. Like, that's healthy relationship with fear, right?
yep.
But maybe, I don't know, when I started the podcast or, talking to new
Right.
people or whatever it is, it's like, oh, that's just something you're not used to doing yet. We're going to do
Mhm.
that anyways.
It's defining what the fear means. If it's
Mm,
fear to bring you out of your comfort zone versus like life threatening, right? It's
yeah.
actually sitting with that. And because 9 times out of 10, that fear is because you haven't done it before.
Yeah, for sure. Ah, so good, Carmen. I love it. Thanks for being
This is
here.
so fun.
Yeah.
Oh, this was so fun.
So, where can people find more about you, learn more about you, connect with you?
You can check me out on Instagram at my handle is Carmen Tuleta.
Hmm.
And you can check me out on my website. I'm doing some updating over there, so
Yeah.
it might be changing a little bit, but yeah, that's the two places you can find me, and I have a Facebook um, page as well.
Okay. I'll put all that in the show notes.
Sounds great.
Okay. As always, thanks for listening, for watching. Until next time.